In a distant future, humanity had spread across the stars. Planets were settled, and new civilizations blossomed. The Galactic Council was established, a group of representatives from various species across the galaxy, all trying to maintain peace among them. However, in the midst of this fragile harmony, tensions ran high. Commander Zara of the Zithrians was a fierce leader known for her strength and sharp mind. The Zithrians were a powerful race of tall, green-skinned aliens with large, expressive eyes. They were known for their advanced technology and military prowess. Zara had a reputation for being uncompromising, which made her a respected figure, but also a feared one. On the other side of the council table sat David, a human envoy with bright blue eyes and sandy hair. He was small in stature, but brimmed with confidence. David had always aimed to promote peace between the species, and he believed in the power of words rather than weapons. Despite their different natures, he had a strong desire to build alliances. It was the beginning of another council meeting. The room was filled with representatives from various alien races. The air was thick with tension as discussions about resource sharing and territorial rights loomed over the gathering. David had prepared a speech that he hoped would calm the rising tempers, especially after a recent conflict between the Zithrians and another species. As the meeting got underway, it became clear that tensions were running high. Zara was particularly agitated. She felt that the other species were undermining Zithrian power and taking advantage of their resources. As David began to speak, he noticed Zara's restless demeanor. He knew that if he could not defuse the situation, disaster could follow. Honorable council members, David started with a steady voice. We must find a way to coexist peacefully. We need to prioritize unity over division. Zara cut in before he could continue. Unity? You speak of unity while your people steal our resources? You humans think you can come here and preach to us about peace. Her voice boomed, echoing in the chamber. David held his ground. I am not suggesting that all humans are innocent, Commander. We all have our faults. But pointing fingers will not help us move forward. The tension escalated. Voices started to rise. Different species argued, each defending their position. David felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This was heading for chaos. Zara slammed her hand on the table. Enough! You do not understand the strength of my people. Human! You can speak all you want, but your words mean nothing. In a moment of frustration and desperation to regain control of the discussion, David stepped forward. You will not intimidate us, Commander. We all deserve respect. In a fit of rage, Zara stood up and, in a surprising twist, slapped David across the face. The chamber went silent. Everyone stared in shock, unsure what would happen next. David's eyes widened, and he felt the sting of her slap. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to remain calm. He was about to retaliate with words, but before he could utter a sound, something extraordinary happened. In that very moment, exactly 6 seconds after the slap, the ground trembled. The lights in the council chamber flickered, as if the universe itself was responding to the tension. Outside, alarms blared across the space stations. An urgent message echoed throughout the galaxy. A fleet of ships is entering our space. They are unidentified. The council erupted into chaos. Representatives scrambled for their communication devices, trying to assess the threat. David and Zara shared a look, an unexpected silence between them. This was no longer about their argument. This was about survival. Commander, we need to unite. David called out as he turned toward her, urgency in his voice. If we don't work together, we will all fall. Zara nodded, still grappling with what had just happened. She could see the fear in David's eyes, a reminder that despite their differences, they had a common enemy. The council members began to form plans, but panic loomed in every corner. Minutes passed, and the council hastily decided to send a delegation to confront the incoming fleet. Zara, realizing potential danger, stepped forward. I may have acted out of turn, but we need all the strength we can muster. Let my ships defend our territory. David raised his hands, tried to rally everyone's attention. We need to act as one. If we don't, we will be crushed before we even know what hit us. The council agreed, setting aside their disputes for the moment. They combined their forces, humans, Zithrians, and others working side by side to formulate a plan. Ships from all races flew into formation, ready to face the unknown. As the fleet approached, the tension was palpable. Zara and David stood on the command ship, overlooking the expanse of stars. "We have to communicate," Zara said. "If they come in peace, we need to know." David nodded, sending a message through the ship's communication system. "This is David, envoy of a human coalition. We seek peaceful dialogue. State your intentions." The response was immediate. A voice crackled through, alien and layered. "We come in search of allies, not enemies. A great threat is coming, and we need your help." The council members exchanged worried glances. It seemed the galaxy was on the brink of something even larger than their squabbles. They had to set aside their differences and unite against this new threat, with Zara and David leading the effort. The combined forces of the various species prepared for the impending storm. Their momentary conflict and the slap that seemed to spark the cosmic disturbance transformed into a catalyst for unity. In the days that followed, representatives from all species worked with the new fleet, sharing knowledge and technology to prepare for the unknown threat looming on the horizon. A slap had ignited a change, reminding everyone that in the vastness of the galaxy, they were not just separate beings but players on the same team. As they watched the stars flicker, the trembling of the galaxy echoed not just the chaos of their world, but the potential for strength and unity. The slap, once a symbol of conflict, had set them on a new path filled with hope. Characters: 1. Zorgan, Supreme Commander of the Zorgonian Armada. 2. Captain Eva Rostova, Human Captain of the Starship Defiance. 3. Glar, Zorgan's First Lieutenant. 4. Dr. Aristhorn, Human Xenolinguist. 5. Jax, a resourceful, street-smart engineer aboard Defiance. Here is your story. The bridge of the Defiance was a symphony of controlled chaos. Alarms blinked insistently, and the hum of the straining shields vibrated through the deck plates. Captain Eva Rostova gripped her command chair, her knuckles white, as she stared at the gargantuan warship that dwarfed them in the viewport. It was Orgonian, all angles and menacing energy spikes, a predator circling its prey. "Shields at 40%, Captain," Lieutenant Chin reported, his voice tight with apprehension. "They're not letting up." Eva knew their situation was dire. They were outgunned, outmanned, and light years from any support. But she wouldn't show it. "Hold the line," she commanded, her voice firm. "Comms, try hailing them again." Dr. Aristhorn, their Xenolinguist, worked furiously at his console, attempting to decipher the Zorgonians' guttural language. "Still no response, Captain. Just static and what sounded like guttural barking." Suddenly, the main view screen flickered, resolving into the image of a towering figure. It was Zorgan, Supreme Commander of the Zorgonian Armada. His skin was a sickly green, his eyes like chips of obsidian, and a network of pulsating veins snaked across his bald head. He radiated an aura of cold, ruthless power. "Humans," Zorgan's voice boomed to the Defiance, translated by Dr. Thorn's device. "You have trespassed into Zorgonian space. Prepare to be processed." Eva stood tall, meeting Zorgan's gaze. "We are peaceful explorers," she said, her voice steady. "We meant no harm. We simply got lost." Zorgan sneered. "Lost? A pathetic excuse. You will be interrogated, and then we shall see." Before Eva could respond, tractor beams locked onto Defiance, pulling them inexorably towards the Zorgonian warship. The hangar bay of the Zorgonian ship was a cavernous space filled with strange machines and hulking figures. Eva, Dr. Thorn, and a squad of Marines were escorted off the Defiance and marched into the heart of the ship. They were led to a stark, sterile room. Zorgan was already there, flanked by 2 imposing guards and his first lieutenant, a reptilian creature named Glar. "Captain Rostova," Zorgan said, his voice dripping with disdain. "We will begin with a simple question. What is the purpose of your exploration?" Eva chose her words carefully. "We are searching for new resources, new knowledge. We seek to understand the universe." Zorgan laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Understand? You are insects crawling on the skin of the universe. You understand nothing. He turned to Dr. Thorne. And you linguist, what secrets have you gleaned from our communications? Dr. Thorne swallowed nervously. I have only begun to decipher your language, Commander. I have learned nothing of strategic importance. Zorgan's eyes narrowed. He stepped towards Eva, his massive frame looming over her. You lie, he hissed. Humans are all liars. Deceit is in your nature. Eva stood her ground. We are not all the same, Commander. Just as your race is not a monolith of aggression. Zorgan's face contorted with rage. In a swift, unexpected movement, he raised his hand and slapped Eva across the face. The force of the blow sent her staggering back, a red mark blooming on her cheek. A collective gasp went through the room. The Marines instinctively reached for their weapons, but froze, knowing they were hopelessly outmatched. Then, something extraordinary happened. 6 seconds after Zorgan's hand connected with Eva's face, the entire galaxy trembled. The lights flickered. The floor bucked. Alarms blared throughout the Zorgonian warship. Even Zorgan stumbled, his eyes wide with disbelief. What is happening? He roared, turning to Glar. I don't know, Commander. Glar stammered. Sensors are going crazy. There's some kind of energy surge emanating from the human. All eyes turned to Eva. She stood there, dazed but defiant, a faint golden glow surrounding her. Back on the Defiance, Jax, the resourceful engineer, was monitoring the energy readings with growing excitement. Captain, you're not going to believe this, he shouted over the comms. Her latent ability just unlocked. That slap triggered something. Her genes carry the code to manipulate cosmic forces. Eva Rostova was not just a captain. She was a latent cosmic nexus, a being capable of manipulating the very fabric of reality. And Zorgan had just inadvertently activated her powers. The tremors intensified. The Zorgonian warship groaned under the strain. Cracks appeared in the walls, and equipment sparked and exploded. Contain her! Zorgan shrieked. Before she destroys us all. But it was too late. Eva's power was growing exponentially, fueled by her anger and the injustice she had suffered. The golden glow around her intensified, pushing back the Zorgonian guards. She raised her hand, and a wave of pure energy surged outwards, slamming into Zorgan and sending him crashing against the wall. I did not want this, Eva said, her voice resonating with newfound power. But you have forced my hand. The Zorgonian warship was tearing itself apart. Eva knew she had to get off the ship and fast. She focused her power, creating a bubble of energy around herself and the remaining humans. Defiance! Prepare to receive us, she commanded over the comms. We're coming home. Using her power, she propelled herself and her team to the crumbling corridors of the warship, towards a hangar bay. The Zorgonians, terrified and disoriented, were unable to stop them. The Defiance, sensing their approach, fired its tractor beam, pulling them to safety just as the Zorgonian warship detonated in a blinding flash of light. Back on Defiance, Eva collapsed into her command chair, exhausted but exhilarated. She had unleashed a power she never knew she possessed, and in doing so, had saved her crew and possibly averted a galactic war. Report, she said, her voice still weak. We're clear, Captain, Lieutenant Chin reported. The Zorgonian warship is gone, but there are reports of similar energy surges all across the galaxy. It's like ripples in a pond. Eva knew what that meant. Her actions had awakened other latent cosmic beings, scattered across the galaxy, waiting to be triggered. The balance of power had shifted. The galaxy would never be the same. Dr. Thorne, she said, turning to the xenolinguist, I want you to analyze everything we know about the Zorgonians, their history, their culture, their weaknesses. We need to understand them if we are to avoid another confrontation. She looked out at the stars, a sense of both wonder and trepidation filling her. The galaxy was a vast, dangerous place, full of both wonders and horrors. And now, she was a part of it, a force to be reckoned with. Jax, she said, turning to the engineer, I need you to study my physiology. Figure out how I unlock this ability, and if there's any way to control it. Eva knew that this was just the beginning. She was no longer just a captain. She was a protector, a beacon of hope in a galaxy on the brink of chaos. And she would do everything in her power to ensure that humanity and all sentient life had a chance to thrive. The slap may have ignited a spark, but it was Eva's courage. In the distant future, the stars were no longer just pinpricks of light in the sky. They were doorways to new worlds, each filled with life and adventure. Among the many races in the galaxy, one stood out for its fierce pride, the Azrith. They were a race of tall, green-skinned beings with elongated faces and eyes that changed color with their emotions. Their commander, Xyler, was known for his fierce tactics and unwavering dedication to his people. On a bright, bustling planet named Terra, known for its rich resources, humans had begun to explore the cosmos. Among them was Captain Jane Hart, a skilled pilot and a leader respected by her crew. She was determined to negotiate peace with the Azrith. After years of sporadic conflicts, she believed a treaty could be reached as both races needed each other's resources to thrive. The day of the meeting arrived. In a grand chamber shaped like a dome, both Xyler and Jane sat on opposite sides of a shimmering table that reflected the colors of their skin and clothing. The atmosphere was tense. Surrounding them were their aides, humans in uniforms and Azrith in ceremonial armor, all whispering nervously. Jane began the meeting, her voice steady. "Commander Xyler, I come in peace. We wish to share the resources of Terra with the Azrith. Together, we could build a better future." Xyler, raising an eyebrow, replied, "Do you think we need your resources, human? For generations, we have thrived without you. We do not trust your kind." As the meeting progressed, things began to escalate. Jane kept her composure, but Xyler's pride was wounded. The Azrith had a long history of being misunderstood, and they took offense at her words. Their discussions turned into heated arguments, and emotions rose like a tide. Finally, in a moment of frustration, Jane stood up. "You are stubborn, Xyler. You would rather fight than find common ground." That was the moment everything changed. With a swift motion, Xyler stood too, his sharp features twisted with anger. In a blur, he slapped Jane across the face. The room fell silent. Everyone froze, eyes wide. Jane rubbed her cheek, stunned. She had never anticipated such aggression, but the fire within her ignited. She stepped closer to Xyler, unyielding. "You think that was powerful? A slap won't stop me from bringing peace." The shock of the slap echoed throughout the galaxy. Unknown to the two leaders, this act would unleash a series of events that would tremble the very foundations of the cosmos. 6 seconds later, a siren blared from the Azrith ships in orbit above Terra. Alarmed, both sides peered out the large windows of the council chamber. What they saw made their hearts race. Several Azrith ships had begun to position themselves for an attack. The command for war had been triggered. "Commander!" shouted one of Xyler's aides. "We must act quickly. The fleet will engage if you do not give the order to stand down." Xyler was torn. He could feel the eyes of his people upon him, their belief in him hanging by a thread. But in that same moment, he glanced at Jane. She was standing tall, her chin raised defiantly. He had slapped a human, and now the stakes were higher than ever. Realizing the situation was spiraling, Jane quickly stepped in. "Xyler, listen. This is madness. If you attack, many will die on both sides. We can't let this escalate." For a brief moment, Xyler hesitated. He felt the weight of leadership pressing down upon him. But his pride flickered, as did the fear in his aide's eyes. He turned back to the view of space. "I did not mean to provoke war, but we cannot back down now." Just then, a young Azrith named Lyra, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "Commander, you must understand. We fight not because we want to, but to protect our honor. However, we can honor that without war. What if we show strength in a different way?" Jane seized the opportunity. "What if we arrange a demonstration of our power instead? A show of force without the destruction?" Lyra's face brightened. "Yes, let's show that we can forge strength through unity instead of violence." Xyler looked from Lyra to Jane, the tension in the room beginning to dissipate. "A demonstration, you say? Perhaps that could work, but how?" Jane explained her idea. They could orchestrate a massive joint exercise with both Azereth and human ships. They would simulate battles and maneuvers that showcase their abilities while reinforcing a newfound alliance. Hours passed as plans were laid. Slowly, they built a mutual respect born of the slap that had nearly ignited war. As ships from both races flew in formation across the sky, they formed a spectacular display, a dazzling dance of colors and power. Finally, the demonstration concluded with a magnificent explosion of lights and signals. Applause erupted from both crews, a clear sign of goodwill. As they watched the lights fade, Xyler turned to Jane. "I did not think I could learn from a human. I was wrong." Jane smiled, feeling a wave of relief. "And I learned that respect can be earned, even in the strangest of ways." From that moment, an alliance was forged. Though the galaxy still held their challenges, the spectacle of unity spread like wildfire. Both races understood now that they were stronger together than apart. The slap that had nearly led to war became a lesson in peace, forever etched in the history of the Azereth and humanity. As Xyler and Jane shook hands, the galaxy trembled not from fear, but from the power of cooperation.